It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays. And yeah, we're talking about how to admit you're wrong. And this is two parts: how to admit you're wrong to yourself, and then how do you admit you're wrong to other people. And they are connected but different concepts. For instance, it was wrong of me to not wear a heavier sweater for some odd reason. I've gotten very cold all of a sudden, but we're gonna tough it out. The awesome thing about having an autoimmune condition is you'll flush hot and you'll go all lupus rashy in the face, and then 15 minutes later you will be cold again, and there's fuck all you can do about it except put on a really, like, this. I swear this is 10 years freaking old, but a swag Bethesda hoodie I got at E3 freaking years ago. I think one of these is the game Rage that came out that year. Anyway, a Fallout game came out that year. You can see that. But anyway, that's not what this video is about. We're going to do help support this channel. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for some things we can't afford at coffee.com/Leanna K. Or GoFundMe, help support our men's groups. I have been way off in predicting how long it's taken to get those up. I was way off in predicting when I was going to be able to get the Patreon links out. It's one of those things that you think it's so simple, and then it comes down to little things that make everything harder. Like my computer deciding to restart in the middle of the night, and I'm one of those many tabs people, cuz tabs are a reminder as much as anything else. But anyway, not important. I was wrong about the day I could get these things. I'm willing to admit it, because you know what? It didn't mean it. There was no ill intent behind it, and it's honestly better to admit you're wrong when you realize you're wrong, not to get any outcome, um, but just so that, one, people know you will admit when you're wrong. Uh, Also, so you get better. And admitting you're wrong should never be a manipulation. It should never be something you're doing because you want a certain outcome. And I find that a lot of people do things like that to try to manipulate or control the people around them, and they don't realize they're doing it. And I see other people hang on to a wrong point, to the point of stupidity. And it's because they think there's going to be some dire consequence to admitting they're wrong, you know? Um and there are some times I remember in my life realizing that I've been wrong about some some big things. I remember some of the jokes my, you know, people in my family would tell that I was taught to believe were funny, and they mainly had to do, the ones I remember that looking back were very cruel. They were about the way South Asians, especially Pakistanis, talked, and that, in hindsight, was, you know, it was wrong. I didn't know. I was a kid, and it was strange because it was weird double think, right? Because I had friends at school. They were very nice people who were from there, and they talked that way, and I didn't put it together that the jokes people were telling were making fun of them. Lesson learned. I had to admit that was wrong to myself before I, before I could improve in that regard. The one that was really hard for me was admitting I was wrong regarding the whole gender is just a social construct. It's not, there's nothing, there's nothing inherently male or female about a person's brain or identity. It's all just constructed stuff. That was a very comforting thing for me to believe, because it allowed me to deny that I was weird, that I was not normal, that I was aberrant. Okay. But, you know, people, including some psychologists, because I talk to a lot of psychologists with what I do, but psychologists like, no, we know the networks in the brain where recognition of gender fires up, and they do form up around the ages of, for most people, 4 and 6 years old. And it's very real. We can see the differences in, you know, cisgender women's brains, cisgender men's brains, and then trans people's brains, and trans people's brains look more like the gender they say they are than the gender they were assigned at birth. It's like, all right, there's something real about that. But that, you know, caused this whole cascade of, oh shit, what am I then? Am I not living my authentic self? Should I be transitioning, you know? And it was tough. And that's the thing. Sometimes admitting you're wrong creates a domino effect, right? Where it's like, okay, so if this isn't true, then this isn't true. If this isn't true, then this is knocking back, because I find the error in a lot of bad logic starts right at our original assumption. And this is why, this is the great instructive irony of Elon Musk, because before he went batshit, or before he went mask off batshit crazy, and that is not legitimately mentally ill, that is narcissism to the point of self-destruction. He was seen as the poster boy for modern first principles thinking. And the thing about pure first principles thinking is, if your first principle is mistaken, the assumption first principle is a starting point or an assumption you make in an argument that is, it cannot be deduced from other things. And in philosophical circles, we fight all the time about what a true first principle is. You know, is murder is always wrong? Is that a true first principle, or is murder a form of theft? Stealing is wrong because you're stealing a life as opposed to, you know, we fight back and forth. It's a recognition that there are certain things that we hold as core values, we don't budge on, and our thinking comes from that. So if you have a first principle that's wrong, then there's all this other stuff that turns out to be wrong. And that's hard, because you haven't just fucked up on one thing, you've fucked up on a whole slew of things. But quite frankly, it's better to realize you're wrong and correct it. Now, there's a lot of really shitty arguments out there regarding when somebody's wrong. And part of the reason I wanted to make this video is knowing how to tell you're wrong versus when not to believe you're wrong. Because there's a lot of fallacious arguments out there of the form, basically being unpopular, having an unpopular opinion means you're wrong. And obviously that's fallacious. Every major piece of social change, every world-changing concept started as an unpopular idea. You know, the idea of individual human rights in itself is started as an unpopular idea. How do we believe that's possible? Well, because of certain, you know, ideas that God determines our path in life. We must follow God's will the kings and queens and the churches determined God's will, the idea that an individual has inherent rights, the idea of equality among all people, well, that's ridiculous. It violates divine right of kings. This can't possibly be because the royal bloodlines they're just inherently better. They tell other people what to do because they can manage it. Regular people are, you see what I mean? It sounds insane. But the idea that certain people matter and certain people don't, that certain people were fully human and certain people weren't, that goes all the way back to the Greeks. And that's the ancient Greeks, and that's when things start getting wild, when you realize that there were only a portion, a minority of males, biological males, were considered actual fully formed men in a lot of ancient societies. Well, that's how they justified slavery. Well, of course, they can't be because, well, if they're actual people with free will, then slavery is wrong and slavery's not wrong. So, right? We all have these ideas that are sort of inverted. And there's these interesting baselines we use to see if we're on the right track. And everybody can think you're wrong. That doesn't mean you're wrong. And that is something that I have to wholeheartedly believe, because that is central to um how that is central to symptomatic PTSD with me. If I start listening to the mob, that's it. I'm a disaster. Somebody said to me yesterday that, well, I'm not like you, you're resilient. And it's like, more and more I start thinking resilience is kind of a lie. I'm stubborn, and there's just certain things that I don't care about. And it makes my life simpler. And what I am is decisive. And I will make mistakes, but I often believe that any decision is better than no decision, because when you make a decision, you can figure out when it's wrong, as long as you've set it up to have, measurements so you can see how you're doing. And that works for me. Somebody else may want to take more time in making a decision. And because I know I have a tendency to just want to make a decision so I don't have to worry about it anymore, I will go, all right, I think I know where I'm going to go. I'm going to sleep on it, or I'm going to take a couple of days. That's me compensating for what I know my natural inclination is. And I read an interesting thing because I wanted to see how other people determined they were wrong. And this is an interesting litmus test, and I'm still mulling it over, so I'm going to offer it because I think it's on to something, but I think there may be exceptions as well. But no, let me lay it out for you. The rule of thumb is, if you are trying to change someone's behavior, you're probably wrong. I'm like, but wait a minute. Boundaries are all about getting people to stop when you say stop. And I realized, no, that's not trying to change someone's behavior. That's making it clear what behavior you will and will not tolerate. And that's not the same thing. It's not change or else. I'm going to make you. It's, well, you can keep doing that, but if you do, I'm going to get up and leave. Very different mindset. And I do think that a lot of people do engage in manipulative tactics that they don't see as manipulations. And when you start drilling down on that, when you really start working on yourself in that regard, the type of people you want around you totally changes, because you see behaviors or processes intended to change other people's behavior, not because they want to, but because you're coercing them into it. And I do think that whenever you're trying to force someone instead of giving them the facts, letting them design for themselves, it may not be a guarantee that you're wrong, but if you are wrong, you are going to be destructively wrong instead of it just being an innocent mistake. And that's why, all this stuff on how to persuade, how to get to yes, all that stuff, there really is, if you spend any time around business guys, you'll see they all do the same thing. I'll take the meeting. They're not invested in the outcome. So they go in there and, hey, if it works, it works. If we can do something, if not, great. And they're on to the next thing. They don't have any incredible powers of persuasion. They're just going into a meeting not invested in the outcome. And that is what successful people do. They go in and it's like, I'm just going to hear them out. They're not investing their sense of self in making the deal, closing the sale. Now, in fairness, these are people who usually already have money, so they have fewer things to worry about, right? Easy to be chill when you can never work again and just draw on an annuity, right? And that's fair. But it is helpful to engage in the mindset of, I really don't care what the faceless masses on the internet or individuals who I don't highly respect think about me. I don't. Why? Because I can't control it. If I let people like that determine how I conduct myself, I'm going to do a lot of shitty things, which a lot of people do. I crossed that bridge and blew it up. God. At least in 2014, probably before, but 2014, that whole Gamergate era was a big wake-up call for me, that I realized I was wrong about the circles that I was traveling in. People were just doing things that didn't make any sense and taking positions that didn't make any sense. And it was hard and I knew it was unpopular, but I just couldn't buy into the no bad tactics, only bad targets argument. I didn't believe in labeling a bunch of people who were just upset the worst harassers on the internet. Now, that was because I had been dealing with angry boy band fans in a past life as a music programming producer. And I know that a Swiftie or a boy band fan can be far more savage than any gamer dude can ever hope to be. I have spoken. Kind of a joke, but you know what I mean. I had more of a perspective. And I knew what the consequences were. I knew it didn't feel like burning bridges. It felt like recognizing the bridges were already on fire. And I just had to pick which side I had to cross. And I couldn't deny what I was seeing. And does it make me sad that some people turned out to be not who I thought they were? Yeah. Do I regret the choice I made? No, I don't. Even though it was unpopular, even though there are people that are still making shit up about me to this day. Like literally last week, somebody made something up about me from back in the Gamergate days. And I'm not going to repeat it because it's just stupid. But we're at another crossroads right now of people are forcing people to choose sides. And that's another thing that it's always bad faith to demand someone choose a side. It's the Solomon and the baby thing, right? I'm going to cut this child in half because you two mothers can't agree on whose it is. And one woman says, no, don't. And so Solomon goes, that woman who wouldn't sit here and watch the child get killed, that's the real mother. And that is, because that's somebody who cares enough to give up possession in order to keep something alive. And that can be very hard when it's translated into your own choices and your own sense of loss. But we do a lot of terrible things because we won't let things go that we've already, quite frankly, lost. We can't admit that we've lost. And I could go on just based on that, but it was hard to admit that a lot of the theories I'd put stock in. I mean, I was already kind of a bad feminist because the women's studies stuff, the gender studies stuff I took in university, I was already like, wait, this doesn't actually track. And so obviously I'd already had doubts before that, but now, circa 2014, yeah, there was a loss. Real financial loss for sure. Um, it was only this past year, my income levels got back up to where they were pre-Gamergate. So, long time in the wilderness, but that's the thing that admitting you were wrong can have some pretty gnarly consequences, but they're better than not admitting you're wrong. And no mob will sway me because it's just, I'm not, I, I may shut up about something, but I didn't actually change my mind. And that's what's kept me alive. That's what got me through. That's my piece of driftwood in the ocean that I will not. People can break me in a lot of other ways, but not that way. And when someone makes a valid point, a point I see the sense in, I don't care who it is. Then yeah, some people I absolutely can't stand have made some valid points, and it's like, yeah, okay, I see the point there. Not many, but it's happened. Um, but don't decide you're wrong because it's unpopular. Don't decide you're wrong because just because you're lonely. Don't decide you're wrong because somebody issued an ultimatum, because again, that's trying to control you. There is a thing we recognize when we're wrong on some level. The question is what to do about it. And this is where the second part of how to admit you're wrong comes from, is that people that do these lengthy groveling, I was so wrong, I recant, that's theater and it's insincere. There's a reason I use the Cliff Steele method of apologizing. It's reductive, but it's an easy way to remember it. Doom Patrol's back for its final half season. Please watch it. It's fantastic. It's on Max. I think it's on Amazon too, somebody said. But I'm stupid. I fucked up. I'm sorry. Now, obviously, this is just the I made a mistake. This is the mistake I made. I'm sorry. Here's how I'm going to fix it. And, you know, for yourself, admitting it to yourself is the most important thing. If you don't want to admit it to other people, that's your call, but admit it to yourself. It's better if you can get used to admitting it to other people. I mean, I was arguing with this person on Twitter, and the account had a beard. And like the profile picture had a beard, but they went by they, them pronouns. And I did check out their profile, but for whatever reason, I missed the pronouns at the bottom. Everything just blurred together. And they told me I misgendered them. And instead of making an excuse, it's like, you're right, I'm sorry, not intentional. Fair. And that wasn't something I did for them. That was something I did for me because it wasn't intentional. And because it's not intentional, it's like, yep, I made a mistake, whatever. And the fact that they just kept going after that and it didn't foster any goodwill, said everything about them and nothing about me. And I didn't go back to misgendering them because I knew it bothered them. Because wrong is wrong. You don't do that. You behave the way you behave for you, not for other people, not to get outcomes, not to make people treat you a certain way, not to make people do what you want them to do. You treat people decently because of what it says about you. You admit when you're wrong because of what it says about you. And one thing about knowing you're wrong and being okay with being wrong, because being okay with being wrong is its own developed skill. It's a learned skill. So, you say, yeah, I was wrong about that. Someone's going, you're so stupid. See, you were wrong. It's like, no, I'm not stupid. I'm smart enough and I'm mature enough to be able to admit I owned a mistake. And you so block, because anybody who goes to mockery when instead of rewarding someone being able to admit that they made a mistake without pageantry and without attention-seeking behavior and without people-pleasing behavior, they're outing themselves, gone. And that's the nice thing about admitting you're wrong. You'll see how people react to it. And it's okay for them to go, it's okay for somebody to go, yeah, you were wrong. And this is the consequences of it, because you should be willing to hear that. That makes sense. Like, yep. And I'm sorry for that. Yeah, I see that. Fair. I didn't mean to cause you pain. I see that I did. I'm going to watch that going forward. You've taught me a lesson. And if people can't take that at face value, that's a them problem. And that's the thing. Just because you admitted you were wrong, you don't have to grovel. And people who do grovel, that's a pageant, and that's people pleasing, and that's trying to, I find groveling a form of manipulation, especially if it's a little tiny mistake and people start going, oh my God, this is unforgivable. I'm a shit person. It's like, dude, you just got my name wrong. Chill. This is not that big a deal. That's not sincere. Don't try to anticipate people thinking you're the worst person in the world, because you're not. How do you know you're not the worst person in the world? Because you're admitting a mistake, and the worst people in the world don't do that. And that stuff, I understand if you never want to speak to me again, let the other person go there. Don't offer it. It's an emotional blackmail tactic. It's looking for reassurance when you're the one that fucked up. And if you look at it really hard, yes, that is what it is. You may not intend it, but I realized doing soul searching, that's what I was doing, and I stopped doing it. Because admitting you're wrong is not the time to seek reassurance. It just isn't. And you have to put on the big person pants, you know? Um, so that's it. Keep it simple. Keep it simple because the simpler you keep it, no one can twist. You're not offering an explanation that seems like you're not really admitting you're wrong. That's a mistake a lot of people make. You're right. I was wrong, but no, no, no. You were wrong. Stop there. Stop there. Let the point land. Don't defend yourself. People leap to defend themselves, and often it's not, um, to use D&D terms, you don't take damage until you fail your saving throw. So do the roll before you try to minimize damage. Like, don't do all these moves because every time you roll, every new piece of information you put into an admission of wrongdoing, you're risking a critical fail. You're risking the other person's going to score a critical hit. Don't do that. Don't do that. If you've rolled initiative, let it play out. And that means not over explaining, not overdoing it. Just, I was wrong. And preferably, if you think you got something to be sorry for, say, I'm sorry. That's the beginning of a discussion. And apologies, admissions of wrongdoing are always the beginning of a discussion, not the end. If you go, get off my back, I said I was wrong. Tactical error. Understandable. You're feeling bad. But tactical error. Remember, it's the beginning. Let the other person lead the discussion because then it's all good. Things will return. And if they act like a dick, you can go, yeah, you're showing your colors. I was decent about this. You're not. See ya. Don't need you in my life. Right? That's how it works. It's amazing how effective that is. It's amazing how much confidence you earn by just behaving honorably when you've realized you were wrong. All right. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK, or the GoFundMe for the men's group starting up. Details. Sorry, guys. People keep getting sick on my facilitator team, so we're waiting till everybody's healthy. Until then, thanks for watching, and be